Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of What's Next on Basketball Podcast. I am your host, as always, Jeremy, and, we're back. This is episode, 8? Are we on episode 8 now? I'm pretty sure it's episode 8. Let's check here. It's been a minute, actually, since I've seen you guys. What is it? Has it been a week now? Yeah, it's been like a week. Apologies if you hear any background noise. That's my family there. They're all, getting up and early today. But we're still going to continue on with this because, it's been exactly 10 days since I've last made an episode. And it was just talking about day 2 and 3 of free agency. And, well, as you can see, since, the third day of free agency, nothing really crazy has happened. All the signings that have happened I wouldn't really say huge moves for anybody. There are stuff here I'm going to talk about where I'll be like, okay, that was a good signing, because I'll probably try to do it. It will be most likely the last thing that I talk about, and it's just going to be my grade for all the teams and, how I felt they did this free agency. So it's the simple things, A+ being the best grade you can get, F being the worst. So we'll have that ready. But before we go into that, we got to talk about other things that happened, in the last 10 days since I've, last made an episode, which was episode 7. Yeah, episode 7. A lot of things that happened. The first thing we'll start off with is the CBA, new CBA that happened at the NBA. So I talked about it before in a couple episodes, just mentioned it really. I didn't really get too much into it, but it was just, what what did the new rules and stuff were, if they put anything new for the game, and they did do that, which I'm going to talk about right now. Let me bring that up to talk to you guys about. Where was that article I saw? Here it is. So, alright. Here are the things that we did find out when it came to the CBA. First thing that, these were all key points, because I told you guys, I was really just going to do any key points that I noticed that were either in the new CBA or were not. The first thing that I noticed that wasn't in the new CBA was the one and done rule when it comes to college basketball. So as most of you know, when it comes to college basketball, you're not allowed to go into the draft until you do at least 1 year. Recently, though, I would say in the past 4 years, maybe even longer than that, ever since they made that rule, people really wanted it to go back to the whole, you can just come straight to the NBA out of college. There's a lot of different reasons, but the key point that I'll mention as to why people wanted that to happen again is because a lot of people feel like the NBA is ready now when it comes to their young talents, because in the beginning, when they did make that rule for, the one and done, this was at a time when the NBA wasn't really ready for their young guys, because they were still at a time where they were used to a player being there for 3 to 4 years, and then, being okay, I want to enter the draft. But now, since they've had it for a while now, where most players these days do the one and done, they're now ready for that. They're ready for the young guys. They're more prepared for it. So a lot of people feel like they should just take that rule out and just go back to the whole high school thing, because even in high school now, they're really prepared for the NBA, most of them. So they feel like, hey, just let them come up to the league when they're, they would be 18, I believe, and just let them do their thing. So obviously that didn't happen, so they're still going to keep that rule for, I think this is a 7-year deal, so I guess, I'm assuming that means they can't change it until the CBA is over again, so I guess the next 7 years we're still going to have that rule. It's not the biggest deal in the world, at least to me it's not. So I don't really see it as much of a crazy thing where it's this is going to be really cool. No, I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. But yeah, moving on from that, that was one of the things I noticed that I felt just to tell people about, because I know people were really big on that to see if that was going to be something they changed. The next thing I did was something I did talk about, which was the NBA's, luxury and salary cap. Let's look here. I think how much did it go up? Let me see here. Oh, here it is. Oh no, that's contract extensions. Where is... I saw it somewhere on here. I was just reading it. It's the NBA thing. Here it is. The league plans to curb the spending by implementing a second salary cap apron, which begins at $17.5 million over the tax line. The teams that reach that tax mark will no longer have access to the taxpayer mid-level exception in free agency. So that's the new rule they did for that. I know there was they also... I can't find the exact amount here, the money, for some reason. I just read it, but I don't know where it went. I'm sure you guys seen it before, but they raised, I believe, the salary and luxury tax as well, for like how much, a team can spend and go past. The next thing here is probably the biggest one of the two that I saw, which was that there will be a minimum for games played. They changed the rule again for how many games you can play. Now, the league moved it up to 65 games in order to win like a postseason award. So that has been a thing I feel like a lot of people have complained about, and you might have noticed where there's a lot of players who win like an award, and some people feel like they don't really deserve it because they barely played most of the season. And I guess the league saw this and they were like, all right, let's make a new rule for this, which I think is actually a really good idea, just because it's gonna now make players want to play more instead of doing the whole, what is the word that people say it's called? Load management on the team. Now you actually see your stars play, and if you go there to watch a game, you'll know, okay, he's most likely going to be there unless he's injured. So, yes, it's still 65 games, so there's still a good amount of games. It's at least, though, less than 20, I'm pretty sure, that they won't play, so it's not that big of a deal. I think the exact number would be maybe like, I want to say 15. Let's see if it's maybe like 15 to 17 games, for sure they at least won't be for, if they don't want to play. Because recently we see a lot of teams where it's like, oh, we barely get any players make it. I think this past season we only had, I want to say like maybe 10 players that played the whole season. So we don't really get that many players that play a lot. I think we even had only like 20 or to 30 that even played 70 or 60 games. So this is going to be a really big difference when it comes to players and just, how they're going to take the game forward. Because as it says, in order to win an award, and that means MVP, Sixth Man of the Year, not coach, because coaches do their own thing. Like Defensive Player of the Year, Most Improved Player, Rookie of the Year, all that stuff, you're going to have to play at least 65 games. Now, there could be an argument to say, well, what if there's a player that's really, really good and he deserved it, but near the end of the season, he got injured, so he's like 1 or 2 games off. Now, I could see something like that happen where people would be upset because they feel like he should have gotten it. I don't know how they would do it in that kind of case, if they would be like, oh, we'll just like let it slide since he's only off by 1 or 2 games, or they're gonna be like really strict on it and be like, no, since you didn't play 65, you're done. Because you couldn't make the argument, well, he got injured, so it's not his fault. So I don't know. I'm sure they've thought of situations like that, which I'm sure, they have an idea of how they would go with that. But, until then, that's the rules. So hopefully we see more players play, try harder. It's going to be nice. I said it before how I'm not really as big on the awards anymore as I used to be, just because I've realized now that the awards really don't matter that much, because it's just really all you want to worry about is having a nice record for the regular season, so then you have a good spot in the playoffs, because the playoffs is where it matters. The playoffs, if you want to be known as the star, as the next guy, you want to win a championship. That's all that matters at the end of the day. Getting something like an MVP, Sixth Man of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, that does help on your resume. It does. I'm not going to lie. It really does. But it's just, at the end of the day, all that matters is getting that ring. Or, I don't know, maybe there might be another championship possibly that people might argue about, which I'm about to talk about in just a second. And right now. Here it is. As most of you know, the NBA has decided to make a new thing. They have just they talked about it for, I want to say, already a couple years now, where Adam Silver was really interested in making an in-season tournament, and we always been hearing about it, but we knew that the reason why he didn't make it yet was because he had to wait until the contract was up, so then they can make that deal. And now that the CBA is finally up, Adam Silver can finally do the in-season tournament that he's been wanting. He felt like this would really help the league when it comes to people wanting to watch and be entertained. Obviously, it's new and we haven't seen it yet, so it's more of like we just have to wait and see kind of moment. So we'll see from there and just see how it goes. And right here I have just this was posted by the NBA on their Instagram, and it was basically just a full rundown of what you should expect from the in-season tournament and just how it works. So the first thing they showed was the group draw. All 30 teams are divided into 6 groups of 5 teams. Groups are determined by draw based on prior season's regular season record. That sounds repetitive, but yeah, so prior to the regular season's record, so you have the West Conference that has all the teams there, this conference has all that. I know they actually put the groups there. I'll talk about who goes where in the groups, because I know they posted that. Next, they talked about how tournament nights will take place every Tuesday and Friday from November 3rd to the 28th, with the exception of Election Day on Tuesday. Okay, I guess that makes sense. Each team plays the 4 teams in its group once, 2 homes and 2 aways. All tournament games will count toward the regular season standings except the championship. So this is the thing that I did hear about, and I was kind of I wasn't really on the side that I like this idea, because now that means that there's going to be people playing more than 82 games, and I kind of feel like that's unfair. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe technically it's going to be even because each team plays a certain amount, but I don't know. Some teams might play more than the other because the only one they said that doesn't count is the championship game, which I don't know why that doesn't count, but hey, I digress. It's just, it doesn't seem like a really good idea. I don't know if that was a smart idea to be like, hey, let's include it in the regular season standings. You could have had it as its own thing for, teams to keep track of for like records, and I would have been okay with that. Like they do with the playoffs. You don't see them adding more games to it the farther they go. So I just think that's kind of silly, and I don't know how I feel about that. So we'll see from that. Because now it's like, this will also... It's a bad idea for what I said, but if you want to play devil's advocate, you could also say it's a good idea, because now that will make teams really want to try hard in this in-season tournament. Because I was going to wait to talk about it, but I'll just say it now. The whole idea of why I don't like the in-season tournament is because I feel like it's a waste of time. From what we heard here, and I'll read it again once I get to that section, is that all they're going to win really is a trophy and like 500,000 in cash, a certain amount. I heard it was 500K, but the number could be different now. It's just, I just don't really feel like, what's the point? It's like that. It's not the NBA Finals trophy, so why should teams care for this? Is all I felt like my whole argument to it. It's like, why should teams care? It's not an important championship, so who cares about it? But now if they're doing things like this, maybe people will start caring about it. It's just, I don't feel like the players are really going to try that hard, which is really going to sour this whole in-season tournament. Obviously, we're going to have to see. And now this thing I just read here about how they're going to count it as a part of a game for the regular season, maybe teams will try to try harder, since they know this will count for their record and this could help them get a better spot in the playoffs. But we'll see. They also have things like the knockout rounds that we'll see. It will take place between December 4th to the 5th at the home city of the higher seed. The semis and championships will take place on December 7th in Las Vegas. That was announced. They said that will be held in Las Vegas, which is cool, I guess. So if you want to go there and do your thing, I apologize if you hear people in the background. My walls are very thin, so you can hear everything they're saying. But here we go. So what is at stake? They wrote down here. Teams will be competing for the new NBA Cup. Let's see, league honors. At the conclusion of the tournament, the NBA will name the most valuable player of the in-season tournament and the all-tournament team. Okay. Oh, so it's basically like how it would be. Oh, that's interesting. You also get a prize pool that will be determined to the players on the teams that participate in the knockout rounds. They already mentioned the game. We already saw that. And then they do a big picture here, how it's going to look. So it's going to be, in total, let's say you make it like all the way to the championship. You're playing around like 3 rounds, I guess. At least that's what it looks like. It's going to be the first round, which is the quarterfinals. Then you have the semifinals and then the championship. So all this is going to go from November all the way to early December. So I guess that will be something interesting we can, also watch too. I don't know. I'm happy about it because I always love tournaments. Tournaments is always a big thing that I loved. So it's going to be nice to see. It's just I'm worried that teams aren't really going to try that hard. That's my only concern about this whole thing. But back to the things here. Here's all the groups. They revealed the groups 5 days ago, and here's what we're looking at. We'll start with the West. We have group, I guess they go by West. So West A is going to be the Memphis Grizzlies, the Phoenix Suns. We have the Los Angeles Lakers, the Utah Jazz, and the Portland Trailblazers. So that's group, West A, they said. That's an interesting group. I guess some of these kind of look unfair compared to others, but at least from what I see here, most of them usually have like 3 teams that you consider that are like good teams, and then it's always like the bottom 2 that no one really cares about. Because like they said, they determined it by record, so this makes sense. So West A, they have the Grizzlies, Suns, and Lakers, which are always competitive competition. That'll be fun to see. And then you have like the Jazz and Trailblazers, which I don't expect to really do much. Maybe the Jazz, since they have a lot more guys that could potentially be good. But obviously, like a team like the Trailblazers is not going to be good. Now, we have West B, which contains the Nuggets, Clippers, Pelicans, Mavericks, and Rockets. So basically, the Nuggets have an easy group in their section, which I hope that means since they're doing it that way, I guess it'll always be different every season. So that'll be interesting because, like I said, they're determining it by records. So there's a chance that you're not going to have the same group that you did the previous year. So that's cool. And then the final group, which is West C, has the Kings, the Warriors, the Timberwolves, Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Spurs. So that's the West. Now let's move on to the East. The East, which is East A, has the 76ers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Atlanta Hawks, Indiana Pacers, and Detroit Pistons. And that one's okay, I guess. It really just seems like it's going to be like a Cavs and Sixers battle. The next one is, let's see. Oh, East B, which is the Bucks, the Knicks, the Heat, the Wizards, and the Hornets. Then we have the East C. We have East C, which is Boston, Brooklyn, the Raptors, Bulls, and Orlando. The groups seem fairly okay, as I said. Some seem more competitive than others. I would say, looking on here, the weakest group is probably West B, just because, you have the Nuggets that are always good. But other than that, you have like the Clippers that are always injured. They always have players injured, so they're not going to have anyone good. The Pelicans that are dealing with stuff. Maybe maybe the Pelicans will actually be good. Just because they do have players that are, they have like Brandon Ingram that's becoming, really good. So maybe the Pelicans too, but overall I feel like they're the weakest of these group draws. But, I digress. There's that. Now, what else do we have in the CBA that you guys would, care about? You guys probably won't care about this, so I'll just move on to these last 2 that I saw pretty quickly. The first one was just like the upper limits of contract extensions are changing. It used to be 120% of salaries and is now going to go to 140% of salaries. And then the other one was that the NBA is adding more 2-way contract slots to the rosters. So for teams that need that we'll be able to get more of, which is nice. That's really all it is there. Now, this is the other second big thing that I really wanted to talk about, which was that the NBA has agreed to put 2 new gameplay changes for the 2023-24 season. First thing is that there will be an in-game penalty for flops resulting in technical foul free throw. I think that this is probably one of the best changes that they have made for the gameplay of the NBA, because time and time again we see it all the time. There are these big 6'11" guys just getting pushed by someone that's 6'1", and we're supposed to believe that guy pushed him. In this case, Joel Embiid. Everyone knows it. Joel Embiid always likes to flop, no matter what it is. They could give him a slight tap on his shoulder, and you would think that he just got shot or something, and he's just on the ground dead. Many players do this, whether, obviously also we get upset about it, but you have to also admit that, it's one of those things where it's don't hate the player, hate the game, because they're just going by what the game lets them do. And clearly this was a really big issue to players and fans, because no one really likes it. No one likes the whole flopping thing. That was always a complaint people said about the NBA, is that players flop too much. So hopefully there's a couple things I could see if this new rule happened. First thing is, obviously we're not going to see that many flops, because now if you flop, you're going to get a penalty. They're going to count it as a technical foul, and you're going to get free throws for it. So obviously players are not going to try to do it as much. 2, we're definitely not going to see a lot of calls happen from refs, so we're going to potentially see a lot more refs just letting them play instead of calling stuff, which is probably why this past season we might have seen a lot of times where the refs didn't call anything and we were confused by it. Probably because the NBA was just trying to get them ready for it. Maybe they're just all right, here and there, just don't call a foul and we'll see what happens. So I guess they feel it might work. I think they actually are going to, I believe they're trying this out right now in the Summer League, if I'm not mistaken. So I haven't watched anything of the Summer League, to be honest with you guys, because I know you'll probably be asking me how I feel about the Summer League and how do I feel about the players and how they're performing. I don't really watch it just because I don't take much of it super seriously and stuff, because it's you could have a player that does amazing in the Summer League and then he comes to the NBA and it's oh, he's not as good as he was in the Summer League. So I don't really like to take it for granted. Things that I've seen are people being oh my god, Brandon Miller, he got 8 fouls one game, because in the Summer League you can get up to 10 fouls, I believe. So they're oh, he had 8 fouls, he has poor shooting, he's doing terrible, he's looking like a bust already. Oh, Victor Wembanyama played horrible his first game. He might have played good his second game, but he's not doing as well as we thought he was going to do, and I'm really nervous about it. And it's just listen, calm down. It's just the Summer League. I will determine my answers for these players when they go in the regular season. I'm not going to worry about them doing this. Something okay, I will say, yes, it's a little worrisome when they're not even facing superstars. They're facing a bunch of okay players, or up and coming rookies that aren't at their potential yet. So it's just, that can be a little worrisome, but I'm not going to take him for granted and be oh my god, he's a bust, he's not going to do good in the NBA. No, let's all relax and wait until they perform in the regular season, which at least matters more than the Summer League. Now, back to what I was saying when it comes to the foul thing. The other thing I do expect to change is charging fouls. I don't think charging fouls are going to happen a lot. I really do think that's going to be a thing we don't see a lot, just because refs, that's going to be a thing where either if we see a lot of it, it's going to go to either refs determining if it is a charging foul or if it's them flopping. What I mean by that is, the example again, you're not going to see someone that's 6'1" take down a guy that's 6'11". So that's going to be something where instead of saying it's a charging foul, they might end up saying it's a flop. And, they'll get free throws for it. So that's something we'll probably see a lot that will frustrate players, but it's just one of those things that players always just have to get used to when it comes to the game. The game is always changing. It's never going to be the same. So they're just going to have to get used to it. And the second thing that they changed, which I was also a big fan of, was that a second coach challenge will be awarded if the first challenge is successful. This is such a great idea. I have been saying it for the longest now that I think that it's silly that if you successfully, if you get a challenge successful, I think it's silly that you don't keep it, because it's like you got it successful, so why not keep it? Like a perfect example is the MLB. The MLB does this where if they get it successful, they get to keep the challenge. And since I started getting into baseball, I think it was last season, and I'm watching it actually now, the Yankees are doing all right. I'm a Yankees fan. I'm watching them here and there. It's kind of frustrating with them because it's kind of the same thing that I talk about with like RJ Barrett when it comes to them being inconsistent. It's like one game the Yankees are destroying the team, and then the next game they're getting destroyed by like 12 points to 1. It's very frustrating by them, but yeah. So when I see that game and I see how the challenge works, I'm like, oh, this is such a great idea. The NBA should do it. And clearly they thought the same thing, which is why they added this rule. I think it's a perfect idea, and I think it's going to help a lot. Now, what else do we have here? This is also some other news. Like Greg Popovich signed a new contract for the Spurs, so he'll be staying with the Spurs. LeBron announced that he'll be doing his 21st season in the NBA, which most of us probably already knew. I don't think anyone expected him to actually retire. I know he was trying to put that out there like, oh, I might retire, but it's like, no, he wasn't going to retire. So I knew that wasn't going to happen at all. Sorry if you hear that noise. The ESPN keeps playing a video for some reason. Let me just go back here. But yeah, there's that. So is there anything else I should talk about before I get into the big thing? Let's see. Nope, I think that's it. I might be missing something. If I am, I do apologize for that. But let's just get into the big thing, which is grading the free agency this year of each team. So here's how it's going to go. I already explained it in the beginning, but I'll say it again in case you forgot what I said. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to look at each team, and I'm simply going to give them a grade between an A+ to an F. And then I'm going to say, kind of why I felt like this. It's mainly going to be like who they signed, whether it's signing players in free agency, giving players a new contract, maybe doing some trades for a player, all that stuff. It's all included in here. So we're first going to start with the Phoenix Suns. And the Phoenix Suns get an A- for me. The Phoenix Suns this offseason overall, they've been doing fantastic. They started off with a bang by getting Bradley Beal. That's really going to help their team. But as we all knew, we were like, oh my God, their bench looks horrible. What are they going to do when it's the regular season? The Phoenix Suns realized that themselves and decided to go to work. This entire free agency, they got nothing but bench players and like good role players. So because of that, I'm giving them an A-. I think that was a fantastic move by them. They decided, I think it was a good decision that they didn't try to go for like, oh, let's try to get another top star player. No, they were like, let's just get the guys that we know are good role players, good bench players, and that will help our superstars shine brighter and help the team be successful. And that's exactly what they did. I talked about it in my past episodes of the podcast, where I feel like a lot of teams are going to start doing this, which is what the Suns are doing, and it's trying to get good bench players because they realize that if they don't have a good bench, a good depth for their roster, they're not going to go very far in the playoffs or even do well in the regular season. So I was happy that they did that. They signed players like Eric Gordon, Damian Lee, Drew Eubanks. I can't say the other guys' names. I think the other one's like Keita Bates. But like I said, overall, Suns get an A- for me. Next is the Washington Wizards, and they're getting a B+. I think re-signing Kyle Kuzma and getting Jordan Poole in the trade to trade away Chris Paul was such a great decision by them. They also got Tyus Jones, which I do like as a player. So, yeah, I think they get a B+. I don't think it was like super crazy where I was like, oh my God, they get an A like the Suns. Like Jordan Poole's a good player, but we still got to see what he can do. Kyle Kuzma, I thought was a good decision by the team. Just because, he's a good player. And even if they don't, like obviously the Wizards are in a rebuild phase. So if you want to look at it more as a rebuild phase perspective, this is a great idea to re-sign Kyle and get Jordan Poole, because now later on you could use these as trade pieces to get back more draft picks, get back more players that other teams might not want. You could get some good deals with these players, so that was a great move by them. Next, we have the Raptors. The Raptors, for me, are getting a C-. I just didn't really feel like their free agency was all that. They got Gary Trent Jr., they got Jakob Poeltl, they signed him on a really crazy contract that I did not like. They got Dennis Schroeder because they needed someone to replace Fred VanVleet, so it was an okay free agency for them, nothing too crazy. Next is the Celtics. The Celtics get a B+ for me. Getting Kristaps Porzingis was such a good move by them, but the reason why I gave them only a B+ is because they traded away Marcus Smart. They went from trading Malcolm Brogdon to Marcus Smart, and I thought that was a terrible move by them, just because the Celtics have a lot of problems, man, when it comes to the players, and they always say it all the time that Marcus Smart was like the glue to the Celtics, and now that your glue is gone, well, if you don't have something to support, what you made, all that happens is that it's going to fall apart. So I'm a little worried about the Celtics and how that's going to go. Hopefully I'm wrong and they end up shining brighter and do, get a championship or something. But I'm nervous. They also signed another guy that I don't know much about, but overall I'm giving them a B+. Next up is the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm giving them an A-. Grizzlies were able to get Marcus Smart and re-sign Desmond Bane. They were able to get Xavier Tillman and Derrick Rose. This was all great signings, in my opinion. Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose are such good veteran players that I think they'll really help all these young guys, and especially Ja Morant, in trying to get more mature and keep continuing on with their championship push. We saw them get the 2nd seed this past season, so I'm expecting something like that again, maybe top 3, top 4. Obviously, with not having Ja Morant, they might be a little more in the lower seeds than we expect. But hey, that was a thing that Ja Morant did. I've already talked about it multiple times. I'm not going to get into it again. It's a thing that he did, and he has to deal with it now. But having Marcus Smart and Derrick Rose is really going to help the team mature. Getting Desmond Bane, re-signing him, was also a great decision, I'll say. It was a great decision to do, just because he's a really good player, and I see a lot of potential in him, so good signing by him. I think he had 250. I talked about it before in the last episodes, but I thought it was an incredible signing. Next, we have the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors again an A-. Getting Chris Paul and Draymond Green, I thought were really good benefits to them. And trading Jordan Poole, even though I wish they didn't, at the same time, I think it was better they did that, just because there was a lot of tension between him and Draymond Green, and we really don't want tension right now. If they want to go back to being this great team, they need to keep the guys that help them through that. Now, do I think Draymond Green was worth the amount that he got signed? No. But having someone like him on the team is great and beneficial to them. And as I said, having Chris Paul is great. Now he can be the point guard, I'm assuming he's the point guard, and Steph will be maybe the shooting guard or something. So this will be a great move. A lot of people really forget Steph Curry and his off-ball movement and how crazy he can be, so I'm excited to see more of that. They also got someone named Corey Joseph. I don't know much about him. I apologize if he's someone I should know. But yeah, overall, A- by the Warriors. Next is the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks get an A. We saw recently that they also got Grant Williams. So they have Grant Williams. They re-signed Kyrie Irving. They got Rashawn Holmes in a trade. They signed Seth Curry. They got Dwight Powell. And they got Dante Exum. This was great by them. The Mavericks, a lot of these players are really good defensively, and that's what the Mavericks have been needing. And you also had in the draft, which I talked about before, when it came to the Mavericks and how they did. They also got a nice center. It's great overall. I think Mavericks had a fantastic free agency. Nothing too crazy. They got their star player back, which was Kyrie, because I was worried by them. As I said, we have to wait and see. Now they re-signed him. Now we'll see how long he wants to stay with the Mavericks. Hopefully he stays for the rest of his career and tries to help Luka. Excuse me, sorry, but we'll see. Next is the Minnesota Timberwolves. I gave them a B. They had some nice signings like Nas Reed, Troy Brown Jr., Shake Millen, and they re-signed Anthony Edwards, which was a huge up, a good thumbs up for me. Anthony Edwards is such an incredible player. I do see him in the future. We could argue him being like a top 5 player in the league. Anthony Edwards is amazing. He's the guy they should try to build around when it comes to the Timberwolves. He's been showing a lot of potential. And I can't wait to see, this next year of his. He just gets better and better. Next, we have the Hawks. Originally, I had the Hawks have a grade of an F, but I'm going to bump it up to a D. And the reason is because they re-signed DeJounte Murray. Now, it's someone that I expected them to re-sign, which is why I didn't put the grade as higher than some people might have, but they re-signed DeJounte, and then all they got really in free agency was a trade for like Rudy Gay. I think they also got like some other players that like just I didn't see as like huge moves by them. So that's why I gave them a really bad grade. They probably have the worst grade out of anyone of the teams I graded. Next, we have the Jazz. I gave the Jazz a C+. Getting John Collins was a really good move, and I think might end up being beneficial for them in the future. I'm really hoping John Collins has like a most improved player season coming up. They got Jordan Clarkson. They re-signed him. They got Talen. I think it's Talen Horton Tucker. They got him, but other than that, that's all they really had. So yeah, C+ by them. Next is the Miami Heat. From what it says here, it looks like they got back Kevin Love and Josh Richardson, and they got Thomas Bryant. I gave them a C+. No crazy moves I really saw by them. Next is the Pistons. The Pistons got Alec Burks, Joe Harris, and Monte Morris. I gave them a C. Joe Harris is a really good player, so I thought that was a good sign-in by them. But the other two, like Alec Burks, he's alright. He's a good shooter for your team, and Monte Morris can, he's an alright role player and could be a starter if you really want him to. But there wasn't like a signing that made me feel like, oh my god, this is a big piece move for the Pistons. Obviously, the Pistons have a lot of their young guys, and I'm sure they're now going away from the rebuilding phase and are now entering a let's try to compete for the playoffs type route. So, yeah, there's that. Next is the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers get an A+. What an incredible free agency that the Lakers had. They got Jared Vanderbilt. They got Torrance. Is it Torrance Prince? They got Gabe Vincent, Rui Hachimura, Cam Reddish, Jackson Hayes, D'Angelo Russell they got back, Austin Reeves they got back. This was an incredible offseason for the Lakers. Incredible. I don't remember who they got in the NBA draft, but I know they got back a player that people had like upsides with that were like, oh, he might be really good. So overall, the Lakers just did great. They got role players, which is what they needed, and they got back players that they really needed back, like Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, D'Lo. This is great. Great signings by them. Gabe Vincent was a huge piece for me where I felt like that would be good. A lot of these guys I feel like are just going to do great with the Los Angeles Lakers because the trainers and all that are really, really good. So I'm excited to see where the Lakers, I'm expecting them to be at least top 3 next season. I have, LeBron has said it. He said it many times before. He's at the point of his career where he wants to keep winning championships. So this seems like a team that could help him lead to a championship. So I do expect them to do good this upcoming season. If they go, I don't expect them to go anywhere besides like the NBA Finals. Like that's their floor for me. It might be overhyping them, but like I said, LeBron said he wants a championship. Okay, then my floor for you is the NBA Finals. So you better make it, because if not, then this team just doesn't seem like it's worthless. Next is the Bulls. Bulls get a B+ for me. Nothing really crazy when it comes to the sign-ins. But yeah, there's really that. Not much to talk about them. Kings get a B-. They got back Domantas Sabonis. They got back Harrison Barnes. They got Kessler Edwards. They got this guy that was from like the Europe league. I think he was like the former MVP. I don't know how to say his name, and I apologize for that. But, they got him, and he's pretty cool. So they get a B-. Next is the Pelicans. Pelicans get a C-. They got Garrett Temple, Herbert Jones, Cody Zeller. They're okay, like I said, so Pelicans didn't really have a good free agency. Next is the Knicks. Now, the Knicks only did 2 signings / re-signings this free agency, which I expected from them because I feel like the Knicks are kind of planning something in the background that some of us might not be realizing. I think they're going to wait for all these. They're waiting for that next superstar to be frustrated, and then they're going to try to get him. We were going to try to get Damian Lillard. I expected that to happen, but after Damian Lillard said he wanted to go to the Heat and nowhere else, I was like, oh, okay, so he's not coming back. Not coming back. Not that he's coming back, that he's not coming over here. So that was out the table. But I know there's been things like recently, Joel Embiid has been like the biggest target for us. I've talked about how I felt about Joel Embiid. He's a lot to deal with. Will I think he'll be beneficial for the team? Yeah, because he is a former MVP and he's done great. It's just I hate that he flops a lot, and I don't like how he can't take a team past the second round. He tries to make all these excuses that I don't really like. Obviously, if he's on the team, then I'm going to root for him because it's the New York Knicks. And maybe having someone like a Jalen Brunson, IQ, Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, Quentin Grimes, Josh Hart, I feel like that maybe that would help him in order to finally get past the second round. And the others, so here are the things they did. The Knicks they re-signed Josh Hart, which was a great move by them. He was a key player when it came to us being successful this past NBA season. And they also got Dante DiVincenzo, which, as most of you know, Dante, Hart, and Brunson were all former teammates. So the New York Knicks are now just becoming the New York Villanova. So that's nice to see, I guess. But if it's the same how it was with the chemistry between Hart and Brunson, I expect a lot from Dante. Now, Dante isn't like this crazy player where it's like he's going to score 20 points for us. I expect him to have a Josh Hart type role where like he's a very key player on the bench, or maybe put him as a starter. I don't know. I'm expecting him to be on the bench, and he's just going to help all the guys there and really help our team just strive when it comes to the bench players. Next is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I gave them a B+. They got Karis LeVert back. They got Max Strus, Ty Jerome, Damian Jones, and George Niang. Those are all really good players. So, yeah, they get a B+. Next is the Indiana Pacers. I gave the Indiana Pacers an A-. They signed Bruce Brown, which was incredible by them. I did not expect them to get Bruce Brown, and I thought that was amazing. They got Obi Toppin, which, as you all know, I love Obi Toppin, and I think he'll strive when it comes to the Indiana Pacers. I expect him to have a really good season. I got to get his jersey. I don't know if it's out yet, but I got to see if they have his jersey out yet for Obi Toppin. And then we also have Tyrese Halliburton, who re-signed with the Pacers, and that was a good move by them. So the Pacers are making good moves, and it might not be this season, but I do expect them to start trying to go back to this playoff push. So that'll be nice. Next is the Trailblazers. Trailblazers get a D+. Simple as that. They did a terrible contract with Jeremy Grant, and now they have to trade Damian Lillard for horrible pieces in return, most likely. So yeah, they get a D+. Next is the Bucks. The Bucks re-signed Chris Middleton, they re-signed Brook Lopez, and they got Malik Beasley. So I thought that was all great. Yeah, B. That's a B by me. Next is the Nets. They re-signed Cameron Johnson and got back Lonnie Walker, which is a great player, so they get a B. Next is the Spurs. I gave them a C+. Now, this is only for the free agency. Obviously, if I put the draft in here, then they most likely get an A as their average. But they get a C+. They got back players that are okay. There's not a player on here where I'm like, oh my god, they're really going to change the game for the Spurs. But obviously, they were just trying to sign players to help, Victor Wembanyama, build around him, and hopefully help him get at least situated and comfortable with the league. Just get players around him that will help him, thrive. So that was good by them. Next is the Magic. They actually have the lowest grade here. They have an F. All they got was Joe Ingles and Morris Wagner. That's it. And they also waived Bol, so it's like horrible free agency by the Magic. Just bad all around. Next is the Rockets. I gave them a C+. Some people might have done it lower than that, but the reason why I said a C+ is because Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks, yes, they got some really overpaid contracts, but they are good players at the end of the day, and I think they'll really help the young guys. I said it before in previous episodes, and I do really believe that. I think they'll be really suited for the young guys and help them out. They also got Jock Landale. I believe he's a center, and he was on the Suns. I believe he was the player that was playing when DeAndre Ayton wasn't doing good in the playoffs, so he was another nice pickup by them. Next, we have the Nuggets. Nuggets get a C for me. They got Reggie Jackson, DeAndre Jordan, and Justin Holiday. No signings that I thought were really going to be game changers. And the fact that they let Bruce Brown walk is kind of sucks. I was hoping they would do maybe a higher contract, but I guess Bruce Brown just didn't want it. He was just going for whoever paid him more, and I guess the Nuggets just didn't want to pay him all that money. So there's that, I guess. Next is the Oklahoma City Thunder. They got Victor Oladipo, a name that I can't pronounce, and Patty Mills. They get a C-. Nothing too crazy from them. Next is the 76ers. They also get a C-. If I saw correctly, all they really did was get Patrick Beverley. So, cool, I guess. Next is the Hornets. I gave them an A because they re-signed LaMelo Ball, which was a huge, important mission that they did this free agency. They haven't done anything else, really, but yeah, they get an A from me. And last but not least, we have the Los Angeles Clippers. They get a C+. They were able to get back Russell Westbrook. They got Kenyon Martin Jr. and Mason Plumlee, but they're not players that I see that will bring them to a championship. Maybe Russell Westbrook, maybe he'll come back and be this amazing player that he used to be, but I don't really expect him to really change the game. But yeah, that's really it when it comes to the NBA grades. Definitely let me know if you guys have any grades of yourselves. But with the conclusion of that will be today's episode. I appreciate you all for listening. It's always nice to talk about basketball on here. I definitely do plan on obviously talking more when the season's getting closer and closer. I was kind of busy these past 10 days, which is why I didn't really, get on at all. I was on vacation with my family. We went to the beach and stuff. It was really nice. But now that I'm back, everything's all chill now. So, yeah, that's really all it is there. As I said before, thanks you all for listening. And, this is me signing off.